what if what you feared came to life? And it's not always the boogeyman. It's not always the big green monster. Sometimes, what if you were over here fixated on, I've heard people say, I feel like something bad's going to happen today. I feel like something bad's going to happen today. And then you brought it to life. What about those zodiac signs you study? You sit up here and go look and say, well, Aries told me I'm going to have this happen or this is going to happen. But y'all also invested, and I said that on a zodiac episode, that y'all are so invested in those zodiac signs that if that zodiac sign for the day said, hey, Gemini, or hey, Libra, you're gonna die today, would you abide by it then? Would you listen to it then? No, you wouldn't. Y'all pick and choose. So keep that in mind moving forward. Now I know what you're thinking. What you guys, what you're selling. Now look, I know you all are on social media every day, especially people who trying to sell a business. You trying to promote your stuff. You trying to spread your message. You got the calling. You got the word from the Lord. All that good stuff, right? But you don't feel like it. You don't have the time to promote the social media. You don't have the time to create the content calendars. You don't have the time for none of that, right? So that is where my new package comes in. And this is called the Trust Builder Package. All right. So this is for those of you who want to create great social media content, whether it's on LinkedIn, Instagram, TikTok, Threads, Facebook, YouTube. All right. And you need somebody to do your captions, descriptions for you that are high SEO that'll get you pushed out there to the masses and to find your personal development audience, because you are more than likely a personal development influencer. So who does this cater to? Coaches and consultants, faith-based leaders, wellness experts, authors, podcasters, motivational speakers, educators, mental health advocates, you name it. All of you who are trying to see the betterment of your community. All right, this package is for you. All right, hit me up in the DM, email me, reach out on the Nazio platform, and I'll hook you up. What's going on, everybody? We are back for another episode of PSA Mental Health Podcast. And guess what? I haven't eaten breakfast this morning. So I don't know how the day gonna go. I don't know what's gonna happen. I know I need to go to the gym today. I know I got a bunch of stuff I got to do, but I ain't eat breakfast, so I'm just here. I don't know if you ate breakfast. If you did, I hate you because I ain't ate breakfast today. So how about that? But anyway, we have a great episode today. I'm excited to see how this is gonna go, because when we talk about fear, God tells us not to fear, right? It's easier said than done. But there's another aspect of fear that I don't think we really covered before. And as I was getting the intel for this episode and the ideas hitting me, I was just like, it's an angle we never attack. So let's go like this. So watch this. The meme for the day reads, what if what scared you came to life today? The inspirations for this. So the first one is actually Job 3:25. It says, what if what I fear has come upon me, what I dreaded has happened to me? If you don't know the story of Job, you should go read it. But basically, the story was about the whole book. Job had went through it. He lost his family, he lost animals, and his wife said, curse God, and he didn't do it. But I think people overlook that verse because in all actuality, it makes me think of those movies like with the imaginary friends and all that crazy stuff, where it's like, what if you were scared of the boogeyman? Just hypothetically, like it's the boogeyman. You scared somebody gonna, break into your house. What if you scared somebody's gonna break into your car? What if you scared somebody's gonna rob you? And because you feared it so much, it came to life. What if that happened? How would you handle it? You know what I mean? That's something to think about. Something to think about. So that's something we're going to keep in mind for this episode, and something we're going to unpack. And the guest that I'm going to introduce in a little bit is going to be able to help us with that. So if you struggle with like, I'm just so scared, and it's easy, to do that. But let me go right here real quick and jump into the next segment for today, which is happy hour. So for today's happy hour, I want to really go more in depth about the whole fear thing, right? It's easy to be fearful in today's world. I'll give you that. You sit up and watch the news all day. You're on social media all day. You hear all these things that people saying and their interpretation of things. So, for example, like if you scared that Donald Trump is going to be the reason, we going to World War III, and now you scared to do anything because you're like, oh my God, we're gonna go into World War III. You're not fighting in the war personally, so I don't even know why you tripping. But of course, you should still be aware, right? And there's a difference between being aware, but sometimes the being so aware will bring about a fear. You know, what about, they say the thing with the recession, and they say like the food scarcity and all of these different things, all these things happen. And then it's like, what do you do? It's like, what do you do? I'm an advocate, and people say you should still be in the know, but I don't watch the news. And I've said that before on this platform, and I'll say it again. I don't watch the news because you stressing yourself out. One thing my grandma always would say, she would say, and she still probably says it, but she was like, yeah, I'm not fearful, I'm just nervous. I'm like, well, they're kind of synonyms, just just a little bit. And she would be like, oh, I just watch all this stuff on the news and it just makes me so nervous. I'm like, right, you scaring yourself to death. And it's just like, when we talk about fear, usually on the podcast, we talk about it from people who are scared or fearful of taking those risks, or fearful of, what people will think about them, or, what if it doesn't work? And we may cover that a little bit today as well. But what if what you feared came to life? And it's not always the boogeyman. It's not always the big green monster. Sometimes, what if you were over here fixated on, I've heard people say, I feel like something bad's going to happen today. I feel like something bad's going to happen today. And then you brought it to life. What about those zodiac signs you study? You sit up here and go look and say, well, Aries told me I'm going to have this happen, or this is going to happen. But y'all also invested, and I said that on a zodiac episode, that y'all are so invested in those zodiac signs that if that zodiac sign for the day said, hey, Gemini, or hey, Libra, you're going to die today, would you abide by it then? Would you listen to it then? No, you wouldn't. Y'all pick and choose. So keep that in mind moving forward. Now, that's enough of my rant for today. I have a great guest today, and somebody who has a book on conquering fear. It got a lion on it. You guys should get it. I think the marketing is 10 out of 10. So we're going to get more in depth in that. And if you are a person who struggles with fear, again, not just of the boogeyman, or maybe you might be fearful of that your girlfriend might leave you. I don't know. This episode will be the one for you. So let me go ahead and introduce my guest for today. Hello, it's so good to see you.
Hi, thank you for having me.
Yeah. Absolutely. So can you tell the people what's your name, where you're from, and where do you live now?
Okay, so my name is Vadim. I'm originally from Europe, from Lithuania, where I graduated as a medical doctor and worked as a psychiatrist, psychotherapist in a mental hospital before moving to US. Now I'm live in Illinois, in Chicago, and here I'm work doctor of acupuncture and Chinese medicine. So you mentioned my book, and yeah, there is lion. And in this book, Conquering Fear, I summarized my experience working with countless number of people with fears, with anxieties, and I moved from being a medical doctor to being hypnotherapist and NLP specialist and doctor of Chinese medicine, and it's all like different aspects how different modalities look at fear and how I can help people who experience anxiety or fear. So it's my background.
Okay. So let me ask you this, and this is obviously just an opinion before we get into the nitty gritty. Why do you think this generation struggles with anxiety so much?
It's a good question. And actually, I have my own theory.
Okay.
It's just my opinion. And it goes like that each era, each century has its own diagnosis, a mental problem. Let's say 19th century, the main problem was hysteria. And it's what required that Freud invented psychoanalysis. Last century, 20th century, went basically under diagnosis of depression. It was main thing. And again, it was a request. It Now we have whole bunch of antidepressants, right? When Prozac just appeared, we all, especially we as doctors, were happy. We thought that's it. Depression will be
Just
over.
been going.
Yeah, and it didn't happen, unfortunately. And 21st century, and again, for some reason, I felt it from the beginning because it started pretty well. It was quiet, but it was some tension in there. And my diagnosis for this century, it's exactly anxiety and fear. We are waiting for something to happen,
Mm-hmm.
catastrophe. And actually, in 2020, it's started, and unfortunately, it's just going with all these wars and with all problems we experience. So I'm guessing it will be the main thing for our century: fear and anxiety.
It's unfortunate because I hate to be the bearer of bad news, but it's the world is only going to get worse, and that's just the world we live in. It's been prophesied. The Bible tells us that. But I think that even if you are really rooted and grounded, you won't, you of course you'll be aware, and not saying that you won't be cautious, but living in a state of fear is just not healthy. And if you're always in a state of fear and wondering what's going to happen next, and this is not from just a book I've read, y'all. This was me at one point. I remember living a life where I just felt like what's going to happen next, and so much so that you weren't even able to live in the moment. And then you look back, you enjoy moments of your life looking back and remembering that was a good time, but in the actual moment you didn't enjoy it because it was like you were worried about what was going to happen next. So let me ask you this. You've explained all of what you've done, from the Chinese medicine and hypnotherapy, all these things, 30 plus years of work, right? What was the moment where fear almost made you walk away from this?
Oh, no, for me it was a little bit different. I had my own story with fear, which I tried to deny for years and years.
Mm-hmm.
And again, it was therapeutic for me because I decided to share uh, my story in my book also, and it was uh, painful. And my story goes like, as a young man, I served as a military medic during the Chernobyl nuclear disaster cleanup, and it was 1986-87. So I spent 3 months in this zone, how I call it. And again, I was young. It was scary, but it was invisible enemy. It was radiation, right? So the actual fear came later when I was safe, basically. And I started to have nightmares when I was back to the zone. I couldn't hear on TV or radio any mentioning on Chernobyl. I switched the channels, and it was like waves of terror from time to time, and and I did probably all possible mistakes people can do experiencing the fear. First of all, I thought it's my personal problem. I need to deal it myself. So basically, my family, later my wife, didn't know what I was going through. Uh, I tried to just try to ignore the fear, and it didn't work like that, because all we very often what we try to ignore, it persists. It becomes bigger, stronger, and starts to control your life. So, but basically, at some point, I decided that I need help, and I received the help. And my experience taught me a lot when I worked with people with fears, with anxiety. I knew what they going through, and I used my own experience. So it's probably the biggest teacher for me. It's my fear, and I can recognize it right now.
And that's what and we're similar in the aspect. Like the biggest teacher is what you've been through and what you feared, and
Exactly.
you live the lifestyle of knowing what that's like. And just to tell people like this is not, it don't have to be like this. And I think that's the main thing.
And you don't need to suffer alone with
Right.
any problem you have.
Right. And I think sometimes the generation too, we prioritize, or we what's the word I want to use? We put a spotlight on isolation. And again, there's a moments for isolation, but there you can't live a lifestyle of that, because you really can't do it all alone. Because if you could, you'd be much further, and you already aren't very far now. So it's like, just the kind of the thought process behind that. This is for anybody who think they want to start a podcast. So is it you? Do you think you want to start a podcast? Cool. Let's be real. Watch this. So we don't need another podcast that sound like everybody else, right? We got enough of them. We're going to talk about those today. But saying the same stuff with no structure, no message, no plan, that ain't good. Now that's where I come in. Me, right here, Head Honcho. All right. So I have a new podcast package. It's called the Legacy Launchpad. Now, what is this? This is for podcasters who fall in the personal development influencer space. So who is that? That would be obviously personal development. That's pretty broad, but coaches and speakers, Christian-based influencers, faith influencers, maybe a pastor, a church, any type of course creator, education, mental health, wellness, nutritionist, all that good stuff. If you are trying to help the betterment of other people, fitness too, then this is for you. I will help you build your podcast from the ground up. This includes toning up, giving you the message, your niche, your show structure, the episode outlines, the intros, outros, descriptions, all of you. Show up to record and I build your legacy. If you're ready to stop playing, let's get it cracking. Okay, so let me ask this before we move to the next segment. And what it is that you do in your experience, what is the most dangerous form of fear, and how does it affect the body neurologically?
Okay. Actually, it's a good point when we can discuss and distinguish fear from anxiety.
Right.
Yes, and it's from neurological point of view. From let's talk neuroscience for a minute. And fear, actually, fear is good. It's great, and let's start from there. We just need to distinguish again healthy fear and unhealthy fear, and we probably will talk about more. And having fear, it's a safety mechanism. It's help us survive as a species. Otherwise, we wouldn't be on this planet. So we have this small um, structure in our brain called amygdala, and it's like alarm button in our brain. When amygdala detects any danger, it's trigger what we know fight or flight reaction, right? So, and again, there are some problems. We probably, again, it's interesting. We can discuss it later because it's not the function of amygdala detect is it real danger, it's what happening outside of us, or it's what we create. Just imagine, it's still the same trigger what can start this whole cascade reaction, fear, fight or flight.
Right.
And this is fear, and normal fear it's always about what's happening right now. Anxiety, it's a whole different animal, and it's
Right.
a different part of the brain. It's prefrontal cortex, and it's also very interesting because it's the same area which allows us to imagine, to plan, to fantasize, to to see the future. And
Mm-hmm.
so it's, on one hand, it's a huge gift, and only we as a human being in the whole animal kingdom has this ability to imagine the future, for example, to have a plan, and the same structure which uh, force us to worry. And anxiety, it's always about what wrong can happen. It's not happening right now, but when we start to think about what can go wrong, we will start to feel this anxiousness inside. And
Okay.
again, it can feel similarly, but it's two different sensations, and two different structure of the brain activated at that time.
Okay. Good stuff. So he gave y'all a nice breakdown on that and just understanding that, which we've discussed before, but there is a difference between fear and anxiety and a good anxiety and that kind of thing. And
There is no good anxiety, trust me.
good fear, not
Yeah,
good anxiety.
fear is, yes.
Now, before we get into, I'm gonna get into that in the next segment, because I want to address that. But hold on. So let's get into the next segment, which is, what does this have to do with mental health? Now, I actually had somebody on the podcast, so that's why I'm asking, who actually said that there was good and bad anxiety. And you're saying that there's no such thing as good anxiety.
Let me correct myself.
Okay.
There could be healthy dosage of anxiety because
Right.
it helps us to prepare. For example, if you have test tomorrow and you're not ready, this healthy anxiety will push you to do at least something, right?
Yeah.
It's what I often explain, and I write about in my book. I'm often giving my patients the simplest exercise that called thermometer of emotions, and I will explain it in just let's do thermometer of anxiety, right? So you can just imagine this thermometer with scale from 0 to 10.
Mm-hmm.
And there are several zones. And first zone is green zone, let's say tension from 0 to 2 or 3. And it's healthy tension. It's what helps us to wake up in the morning, to go through the day. It's like muscle tonus, right? We all need it. And then it's healthy to have this portion of anxiety. But then it goes yellow zone from, let's say, 3 to 5 or 6. And it's already a little bit too much, but people who usually don't notice this level of tension or anxiety. And it creates probably the most danger in our body because it can go for years and years unnoticed. All right. And it's starting to affect our body organ function. It can create blood pressure, heart beating, stomach problem. It's all what we describe as a psychosomatic diseases.
Mm-hmm.
Then it goes orange zone when we have pretty strong symptoms. I don't know, headaches, we can't ignore, uh, severe anxiety, high blood pressure, right? So we can't ignore it. But sometimes it's pretty too late. Not too late, but already that tells us that we had this problem for years and years. And then it's a red zone, what I call emergency situations, like panic attacks, hypertension crisis, and so on. So, and I often start working with fear and anxieties, offering people to start using this sophisticated tool. to start measuring level of anxiety or fear, or you can have several thermometers and measure it at least 3-4 times during the day. In the morning, to evaluate your level of initial anxiety, if it's healthy or you start your day in a yellow or orange zone. During the day, in the evening, it helps you several purposes. First of all, you like becoming observer of yourself, of what going on with your body, and it's very useful to learn this observer position, to look at yourself and start to notice what's happening. Second, it helps decrease the level, because when you step out and look at yourself, you like at least shortly disconnect with what you feel right now. And third, you can start collecting some data, what situations raise your level of anxiety or tension, and you can be surprised that talking to your spouse or your mother or your best friend, you can start noticing that it's exactly what causing you the most anxiety or stress.
I love that because that is so true. You know, everything you said was true, but I really like that last part when you said talking to a certain person can really. And why is it like that? Why is it that sometimes, I saw something, I think it was a meme, and it says, I was already mad, but when I called my mom to vent about it, she made it worse. So it's like, it's like you go talk to them thinking they're gonna help you out, and they made it 10 times worse than what it is. But it's good because you actually answered my next question, which was the difference between rational fear and the fear that's ruling your life. And sometimes, not saying that, like, if you are just on it, like, say for instance, you maybe did experience, you did get a note on your door saying, hey, you all, make sure you watch yourselves, there has been a few break-ins in the neighborhood. Okay, you just a rational, just awareness, not necessarily walking around in fear. You're not going to your car and then being ruled by fear is going to your car every day, looking over your shoulder like that, then it's ruling your life. But there's a difference between being aware of it and then just knowing that, hey, this can't rule your life because you'll go crazy. Now I have a few tips. Okay, so the first, well, not tips, but just how this aligns with mental health from some sources. So the first one, this is from this Harvard Health Publishing. It says the science of fear, and it says according to Harvard, fear activates the
Amygdala. It's what
okay,
it is. Amygdala, yeah.
and stress
It's a
responses.
small almond shape. It's amygdala means almond.
Okay. And it can alter man's ability to think clearly, make decisions, or even maintain healthy relationships. Chronic fear causes avoidance behaviors and limits growth, particularly in men who associate fear with weakness. So, what is your response to the thought that as a man, you have to be so fearless and you can't show fear and you can't, because if I show fear, that's a weakness. What's your response to that?
Again, it's cultural things, and I
Yeah.
think it's changing. Um, there is some historic truth to that, right? Historically, men needed to be strong. They were hunters. They needed to bring the meat and so on. And again, we always need to look at things holistically. We need to preserve healthy part, but to modify or change unhealthy. But what you described before, um, let's start from the basic. What from my experience and what I'm now teaching my patients, any emotions, even what we label as a negative, right? Like fear, anxiety, anger, it's it's just information. And again, evolutionary, our emotions comes from Latin word motion, right? It's movement. It comes from the body. Our body signal to our brain that something happening, and we need to learn to get this signal, this message, accept it, read it, and act upon it. Because if this message not received, any emotion, it's like a messenger. He or she knocks on a door. If door is not open, messenger keep coming and knocking louder and louder,
Right.
and until sooner or later we can't ignore it. So it's better to learn to uh, get the message sooner than later.
Yeah. And I think that goes into, because it said fear stunts emotional maturity. And a lot of times we think that, as especially as men, we just ignore it doesn't exist. And that actually creates more problems.
Again,
And
it's a cultural filter most of the time, and of course it's very much depends on what's going on in your family, what
right.
model you accepted from your parents.
For sure, definitely. The second one is fear of failure, overcoming fear of failure, facing your fear of moving forward. According to Mind Tools, fear of failure keeps many men from taking risk or pursuing purpose. This leads to procrastination, perfectionism, and surface level grinding, all common in young men, adult men trying to perform rather than transform. And like I said, there's something we've discussed several times. And this is how to face your fear with faith. This is fear will cripple your faith. This is from TonyEvans.org. It says Dr. Evans explained that fear disconnects people from their spiritual identity and keeps them wandering. Much like the Israelites in the wilderness, many men often fear stepping into purpose because they're afraid of being exposed or falling short. What would you say to somebody who's afraid of being exposed or from falling short?
Again, just I would suggest to go deeper, and I develop 5-step strategy dealing with fear. And first step, it's always just acknowledge the fear, because it's what we discussed before. Uh, when we try to ignore uh, this messenger keep coming, right? So first step always to acknowledge that I have this emotion, and it's already requires some courage. Um, Second step, and this will be answer to your question, it's to face your fear
Yeah.
and to have a conversation, because again, it's what I learned myself. Any emotion um, has this message. We need to ask our fear what it wants to tell us. And again, sometimes it's just information about immediate danger, but sometimes it's some deeper meaning, what we need to understand. And it's possible to have healthy conversation with your strong emotions. And then when you get this deeper meaning or deeper intent, then you can create some action plan, what you want to do with this information. And this plan uh, should be bigger than just overcome the fear. Because if fear or any other emotion prevents you from achieving something, you need to ask you what you want to achieve. It's like I can give you a different angle from Chinese medicine, because in Chinese medicine we are talking about energy flow, and
Hmm.
health is when our internal energy chi can free flow inside your body, and problems or diseases starts when something blocking the chi. And of course, fear can block energy flow in our body, and start to create a whole bunch of different problems. So when we remove this blockage and restore free flow of energy, then we are healthy or healthier, and then we can achieve much more.
Definitely, definitely. So, okay, let's go into my next segment, which is I challenge that. And in this segment, this is where we do just that. We challenge some things. So, real quick, you talk about NLP and brain retraining. What's a real life success story you've seen where someone transformed their fear neurologically?
Oh, okay, I can give you. It was one of my seminars, but it was a big one. I don't know, 200 people, 300. And I asked, because statistically, when we have so many people, like 10% would have fear of public speaking. And I don't know if you know, in Great Britain, in England, fear of public speaking, it's fear number one. Second is fear of death. So people are more afraid of speaking publicly than to die.
Okay.
So I asked who has fear of public speaking, and this some people raised their hands, and one woman I noticed did like that, up and down. So I immediately decided that I'm gonna work with her. I asked her to stand up and ask you, if I invite you on a podium, what would be your level of fear right now from 0 to 10? She said 12. I said, yeah, it's a great candidate. So I asked her to come, and we did one of NLP technique. It took 5-7 minutes. Then she turned to the audience and spoke with them pretty confident. So NLP, I like NLP because it's on one hand, it's algorithmic, meaning if you do techniques or exercises correctly, step by step, there is huge probability you will get result. NLP, and first of all, for me, NLP is a modeling, right? So people who got result but can't describe exactly how he did it. And NLP developed the language to describe the personal experience,
Okay.
and created a lot of transformed success stories to success models. Could be replicated
Right.
by asking certain questions and getting answers. NLP specialist can create the model of anything you do well. I don't know if you can cook something exceptionally. It doesn't matter. Your any success story, you can create model and can start using it in different areas to become more effective in new areas. And this is why I love NLP and use it. So, and NLP has a model of quick relief of fear, and it was exactly created by asking hundreds and hundred people who had phobia, and now we're entering the area of unhealthy fears, right? Who had phobias and overcome by themselves, and they were asked how they did it, and people started to describe it as best they could. But by listening tens and tens people describing how they did it, creators of NLP just saw this model, and where the first step is what I already described, to create this observer position. So you can be afraid, but you can look at yourself being afraid, and you're not afraid anymore.
Right.
And this is first crucial step.
That's the first crucial step. So you answer my next question again, but we talked about the prompts, so like some self-reflection prompts. So could you give just some examples of like those questions a person could ask, like maybe like one or two?
Okay, yeah, this is also good, because questions, it's like programs which activate software, and there are questions which activates problem state. Guess what kind of problems, what kind of questions it would be?
Tell me, I don't know.
Yeah. Of course, it's questions which starts with why it's always happened to me, why I'm overweight, why I'm so unhappy. And our brain, it's the most powerful computer. Depending on the question, it will give you answer why you are not successful, and it will give you whole list of why you're not successful. I'm not just sure that it will help you to become successful. So it's
Right.
one set of questions. The questions which help to solve the problem, it's questions which start with how. How did you do it? How did it happen? What you did next? But the question is how makes your brain start to generate answers which would start answering what you can try to do. And maybe this how won't work, but next maybe what you are looking for.
Right. Yeah. And that's good. I mean, it's a simple question, but you have to ask yourself why. Like, and I like that. Why does this keep happening to me? Why does this, and again, people, fear is not always, like I said, that you're gonna die. Sometimes fear is just, I'm scared to get in this relationship because every time I get in a relationship, they leave me or they cheat on me, or it's so many things. That's a fear. That's a small one. Or
And actually, the question why exactly opens this anxiety loop,
yeah,
because what if something happened? Why it's always happens to me? And there we need to understand the mechanism, because each question, it's how our brain works. Again, we create movies, we create whole shows in our brain. But if you used to create only scary movies, it's what what your brain does for you. It scares you all the time, and it goes unnoticed again for sometimes for years and years.
I know somebody, and really it's just several people, and I didn't plan on going there, but I'm gonna go there. And we're talking about fear, and so many people will, let's say, I like scary movies because it's art and it's this and it's creativity, and it is a form of creativity. It's just a dark one. But when you live in a lifestyle of watching those type of movies on a regular basis, so many of those people they're basically desensitized to it. So they're desensitized to, this is feeding your spirit just dark and the gore and these scary themes and elements. So like, what would be your, how, okay, what does it do to somebody? How bad does it affect the person more than they realize? Like, you get what I'm trying to ask? Like,
Yes,
how, yeah, okay.
it creates dependency,
Okay.
because it's like safe, controlled way uh, to experience life, which is not true.
Mm-hmm.
But it creates dependency. Our brain trained easily.
Right.
If it gets some portion of adrenaline, and with eating popcorns, of course it will try to replicate it. So my suggestion would be for such people to live their life, to go, I don't know, to start traveling, to experience life at full, not the, just some surrogate of life who somebody created for you.
Right. Right. So now, before we move to the final segment, for the man listening to this who just says, "I'm not scared, I just don't care anymore," how do you respond to this, that emotionally and scientifically?
Okay, it's possible. Again, I will use the same example of observer position, but sometimes it's become a life position, just to observe the life, and it's safer, it's less painful, but it's also not healthy. Healthy is to be flexible, to have an ability to step out when it's too much, but come back when, for example, I don't know, to experience orgasm. Because in observer position, you can act, but you won't be enjoying the full sense of this process.
Right. Okay. Good stuff. All right, let's move to the final segment for today, which is the weekly sabbatical. And in this segment, we just kind of reminisce on some things. So first, I want to go back and more in depth onto Job 3:25, which says, "Fear can be a self-fulfilling prophecy."
Mhm.
So again, reiterating the verse, "What I feared has come upon me, and what I dreaded has happened to me." Fear can manifest the very outcome you're afraid of. It says that this is foundational because it shows that unresolved fear cycles can lead to loss, missed opportunity, and even emotional sabotage. Emotional sabotage. What is your definition of emotional sabotage?
Uh, okay, it's about what in psychology uh, called uh, parts of us, and again, it's only model, and it's better not to overplay it, but still, there are part of us which motivates us, which push us to do something, and it could be the part which afraid of changes.
Right.
This part easily can become part which will be sabotaging your progress or you moving forward. And the idea is the same. You need to acknowledge that you have this part, otherwise it will be silently uh, be big destructive part of your life. And to try to communicate with this part, and try to understand the purpose, because each part still serves some purpose for us and has a good intent, but maybe just how uh, the part delivers this intent, it's not what you want, right?
Yeah.
So you need to have, and there are psychological techniques how to do that, but you can try to do it by yourself, just to acknowledge this part, to find it, maybe even visualize, imagine how this part could be look like, and try to have honest conversation with this part.
Okay. So, what do you wish more men understood about how fear itself hinders, or how fear hides itself in anger, overachievement, and avoidance?
Uh, let's use the example I gave from Eastern medicine point of view. When we have some blockage inside you, it's start to create more and more blockages, and sometimes it's exactly like several layers pie, and on the top or externally, it could be manifest as a anger, but going deeper, you can discover this part, afraid part of,
Mhm.
and this anger could be just safety mechanism, how person tries to protect himself or herself. And it was exactly my manifestation. My family could not understand why I, from time to time, was becoming pretty angry person, which I normally wasn't.
Mm. And that's crazy because a lot of times with men, we show emotion through anger, and that's usually how it happens. And we think that that's normal. And as a big man, no matter what culture, a big man is supposed to do this. So it's like if you're not doing that, you're not a man. Final question for today: what tips, because again, you are the the expert. You had a book, and of course buying a book is a tip, but what was to give some tips that people can take home today, the young men can take home today from this episode in conquering fear, so that fear doesn't conquer them?
Uh, it's a good question. So I would say um, my tip or suggestion uh, to people to start practicing gratitude.
Mm,
And gratitude is huge. There was studies which showed that it's literally changes your brain.
mm,
Even writing the thank you letter once a week, it's significantly improved health in patients suffering from depression and anxiety. And
mm,
MRI showed the activation of the brain areas related to learning and decision making. So just simple things. Start your day saying thank you for a new day. I'm grateful and I'm open and I'm ready to explore what's gonna happen to me today.
good stuff, good stuff. All right, let's get into the question, the challenge for the week. What if the very thing you're afraid of only has power because you've rehearsed it more than resisted it? That's something I want you to ask yourself, that, and then give me your breakdown of that. Anything else you want to give to the people today, to pub, anything like that?
Again, I would encourage you to. It's on Amazon. It's called "Conquering Fear: The Path of Inner Strength." There are a lot of useful information, a lot of exercises. Uh, if you unfortunately experiencing fear or anxiety, I think you will have answers in this book. And um, I truly believe that this book should be in every home house, uh, starting with parents who teaching their kids not to be afraid, spouse, and so on. We live in a difficult time, as you said, and I agree with that. It's just the beginning. We need to be prepared. It's gonna help you to stay calm in all this storm, which is just starting around us.
Yeah, definitely. And as always, the information for the book will be in the bio for audio and audio platforms and on YouTube as well.
Appreciate it.
So thank you so much for joining me today. This has been a great
For
episode
the
of
invitation, it was really great talking to you.
So thank y'all for tuning in. Tune in next week. PSA signing out. Always remember, keep your head up like your neck hurt. Remember who you are. Make your mind up. Don't let it make you. And as always, good people, I love us for real.